Captain Jinwoo stood on the bridge of the Stellar Wind, his scaled fingers drumming against the command console. The soft hum of the ship's engines felt different today, almost nervous. 3 rotations ago, they had stumbled upon something that shouldn't exist in this sector of space. "Run the scan again, Minji," he ordered, his voice betraying none of the unease crawling up his spine. Science Officer Minji's 4 eyes blinked rapidly as she worked at her station. Her species, the Kalari, were known throughout the galaxy for their analytical minds and steady nerves. But today her hands shook as she operated the scanning array. "Captain, I've triple-checked the readings," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The energy signatures don't match anything in our databases. This isn't the simple cargo hauler we thought it was." The main view screen flickered to life, showing the mysterious vessel floating in the void. At first glance, it looked like a piece of junk. The hull was dark grey, almost black, with scorch marks and what appeared to be impact craters scattered across its surface. It was roughly cylindrical, about half the size of their patrol ship, with strange protrusions that served no obvious purpose. "It looks dead," muttered Tactical Officer Hyunwoo from his station. His reptilian features were tense with concentration as he studied his instruments. But the power readings tell a different story. There's something alive inside that thing. "Captain," Jinwoo had encountered many species during his 20 cycles of service with the Galactic Patrol. The insectoid hive collective with their perfect unity, the crystalline shard empire that communicated through light patterns, even the mysterious energy beings from the galactic core. But humans were different. They had appeared on the galactic stage only 50 standard years ago, and already their name was spoken in hushed tones across 1,000 worlds. "What do we know about human technology?" Jinwoo asked, though he suspected the answer would be unsatisfying. Engineer Do-Yun looked up from his diagnostic panel, his blue-tinted skin pale with worry. "Very little, sir. Their ships use energy sources we don't understand. Their weapons are unpredictable, and their expansion rate defies all mathematical models." The bridge fell silent except for the steady beeping of monitoring equipment. Outside the viewports, the human ship continued its slow drift through space, dark and seemingly lifeless. But the energy readings told a different story. Whatever was inside that vessel was very much active. "Sir," Communications Officer Soo-young called from her station, her voice tight with concern. "I'm picking up transmissions from inside the ship. They're heavily encrypted, but I can tell they're recent. Someone or something is still alive in there." Jinwoo felt his mandibles click involuntarily, a nervous habit he'd never been able to shake. In all his years of service, he'd learned to trust his instincts. And right now, every instinct was screaming danger. "The humans have been expanding into this sector for months," he said, more to himself than to his crew. "Intelligence reports suggest they're not interested in conquest, but their methods are unusual." Lieutenant Yuna from the sensor array station added her own disturbing observation. "Captain, I'm detecting biological signatures inside the vessel, but they're strange. Some appear to be in some kind of suspended state, while others show signs of intense activity." The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. The galaxy had learned to fear human unpredictability. Other species followed logical patterns in their expansion. They sought resources, territory, or strategic advantages. But humans seemed to operate on principles that defied conventional military thinking. "There are stories," whispered Navigator Seong-hoon, his voice barely audible. "From the Outer Rim colonies, ships that encountered humans and were never the same afterward. Not destroyed, but changed." Jinwoo had heard those stories too. Merchant vessels that limped back to port with their crews speaking of human generosity that felt more terrifying than any attack. Military patrols that returned with their wounded mysteriously healed by human medical technology that shouldn't exist. "Prepare a boarding party," Jinwoo finally decided, his voice carrying the weight of command. "But we go in carefully, full. Protective gear, maximum scanner range, and emergency transport ready at all times." The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, but Jinwoo could sense their nervousness. The human ship continued to drift, its dark hull reflecting the distant stars like a metal grave. But those energy readings suggested something far more complex than a simple derelict. "Sir," Minji called softly, "whatever's inside that ship, it's been watching us." The energy patterns change every time we adjust our scanning frequency. It's almost like it's learning from our scans. A chill ran down Jinwoo's spine. In 20 cycles of service, he'd never encountered a species that could adapt their technology in real time. But then again, he'd never encountered humans before. Maintain. Distance, he ordered. Something tells me we're about to discover why the galaxy speaks of humans in whispers. The airlock hissed open with a sound that made Minji's 4 eyes blink rapidly. She stepped into the human vessel, her scanner held tight in her primary appendage, the device's soft blue glow casting eerie shadows on the metal walls. Behind her, the boarding team moved in perfect formation, their boots making soft clicks against the strange flooring. "The air is breathable," reported Ensign Seung-hoon through the comm system, his voice sounding hollow in the empty corridors. "But there's something else in the atmosphere, some kind of medical compound." Minji nodded, her scanner picking up traces of substances she'd never encountered before. The corridors were wider than expected, designed for beings that walked upright, on 2 legs. The walls were lined with panels that pulsed with soft light, creating an almost organic feeling despite the metal construction. "These passages don't make sense," muttered Security Chief Tai-hyung, his weapon held at ready position. "They're too wide for efficient ship design, but too narrow for cargo transport. What were the humans thinking?" As they moved deeper into the vessel, the team discovered rooms that defied explanation. Large chambers filled with what appeared to be sleeping pods, each one connected to a network of tubes and cables. Strange mechanical arms extended from the ceiling, equipped with tools that looked both medical and terrifying. "Captain," Minji whispered into her communicator, her voice trembling, "we've found something. These aren't cargo holds or weapons storage. These are—" She paused, struggling to find the right words. "They look like cocoons." The pods were transparent, revealing figures inside, humanoid forms floating in some kind of liquid, their bodies connected to countless monitoring devices. Some appeared to be sleeping peacefully, while others showed signs of recent trauma, their wounds slowly healing under the care of robotic attendants. Ensign Seung-hoon approached one of the pods, his scanner beeping frantically. "The readings are incredible. These beings are healing from injuries that should have killed them. Look at this one. Half his chest was destroyed, but the tissue is regenerating." Minji felt her blood temperature drop as her translation matrix finally cracked the ship's computer system. Data streams flowed across her scanner's display, revealing the true purpose of this vessel. Her hands shook as she read the manifest files. "Captain Jinwoo," she breathed into her communicator, her voice barely audible. "This isn't what we thought. It's not a prison ship for criminals. These humans, they've built something to keep their wounded alive. They're soldiers who should have died in battle. They bring them here and refuse to let them go." The implications hit her like a physical blow. A species that wouldn't accept death, that used technology to drag their warriors back from the edge of extinction. What kind of enemy could you fight when they simply refuse to stay dead? "There's more, sir," she continued, moving toward what appeared to be the main medical bay. The doors slid open automatically, revealing a chamber that took her breath away. Medical equipment lined the walls, but not just human equipment. Devices designed for different body types, different physiologies, different species entirely. 17 different alien medical configurations, she reported, her scanner working overtime to catalog the technology. Kalari healing chambers, reptilian tissue regenerators, even crystalline entity repair matrices. Captain, they're not just saving their own people. Back on the bridge of the stellar wind, Captain Jinwoo felt his exoskeleton plates shift nervously. The reports coming from the boarding team painted a picture that disturbed him more than any weapon could. "Explain that last part, Minji," he ordered, his mandibles clicking in agitation. "Sir, this medical ship is equipped to treat injuries from every major species in the galaxy. They've studied our biology, our weaknesses, our healing processes, but not to hurt us, to save us. There are medical records here of Hive Collective, drones, energy being essence repairs, even Voidwalker dimensional treatments." Security Chief Tai-hyung's voice crackled through the comm. "Captain, we found something else, a chamber filled with what appear to be robotic medical units. But they're not just programmed for humans. These machines know how to perform surgery on every species we've encountered." Minji moved deeper into the medical bay, her scanner detecting more impossible technology. Healing nanobots that could repair genetic damage, regeneration chambers that could regrow entire limbs, even devices that seemed capable of bringing back the recently dead. The power requirements for this equipment are staggering, reported Engineer Do-Yun from his position near the ship's power core. They're using energy sources that shouldn't exist. This single vessel has more medical capability than our entire fleet's hospital ships combined. The boarding team continued their exploration, finding room after room of wounded beings from different species. Some were humans, their bodies bearing the scars of recent battles, but others were clearly alien creatures that had been brought aboard and healed regardless of their origins. "Captain," Minji's voice was now filled with a fear she couldn't hide. "I've accessed their mission logs. This ship doesn't discriminate. They rescue anyone they find, heal anyone who needs help, save anyone who's dying, even their enemies." The silence on the bridge was deafening. Captain Jinwoo stared at the view screen, watching the dark hull of the human vessel drift silently through space. An enemy you could predict, plan for, fight against, but a species that treated every life as precious, that would risk everything to save even their opponents, sir, Minji concluded, her voice barely a whisper. "We're not dealing with conquerors. We're dealing with something far more dangerous. They're trying to save everyone, whether we want to be saved or not." Communications Officer Su-Young's tentacles moved across her control panel like dancing snakes, each one working independently to crack another layer of the human database encryption. Her species, the Cephalari, were natural code breakers, their multiple limbs allowing them to work on dozens of data streams simultaneously. But this human system was unlike anything she'd encountered before. "The security is incredible," she muttered, sweat beading on her pale blue skin. "It's not just encrypted, it's alive. The code is rewriting itself as I try to break it." Captain Jinwoo watched from his command chair as data flowed across the main screen in waves of incomprehensible symbols. The human language was strange enough, but their digital architecture seemed to follow completely alien logic patterns. "There," Su-Young announced suddenly, her voice filled with triumph. "I'm in. Captain, you need to see this immediately." The main view screen flickered and suddenly filled with images that made the entire bridge crew fall silent. Human faces stared back at them, but these weren't the faces of conquerors or merchants. These were the faces of people in pain. People fighting. People dying for reasons that made no sense to galactic military doctrine. "I've accessed their historical archives," Su-Young explained, her tentacles still working furiously to translate and organize the massive data streams. "Captain, these humans have been at war with themselves for over 5,000 of their years. Tactical." Officer Jae-Wan snorted dismissively from his weapons station. His reptilian features showed the typical disdain his species felt for primitive behavior. Internal conflicts are common among developing species. Most civilizations go through these growing pains before reaching galactic awareness. "No, sir, that's not what this is." Su-Young's voice carried a tremor of confusion that made everyone on the bridge pay attention. Her tentacles were writhing in agitation, a sure sign of distress among her people. They weren't fighting for the usual reasons. "Look at this." The screen filled with translated documents, battle reports, and historical records that painted a picture no one was prepared for. Wars that lasted decades, not over territory or resources, but over the right of certain humans to be considered equal to others. Conflicts that consumed entire continents, because some humans believed others should be free from bondage. "They call it slavery," Su-Young explained, her voice growing stronger as she processed more data. One group of humans owned other humans as property, and other humans fought wars to stop this. Millions died to free people they had never met. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of ship systems. Engineer Do-Yun looked up from his console, his normally green scales now pale, with shock. They died for strangers, people they didn't even know? More data flowed across the screen showing conflicts that defied every military principle known to galactic civilization. Humans fighting against their own governments when those governments became too powerful. Wars fought to protect the rights of minority groups who couldn't protect themselves. entire armies marching into certain death because they believed in something called democracy. Here's another one, Su-Yung continued, her voice now filled with awe and horror. They call it the Great War. 20 million humans died fighting over political systems, not for resources, not for territory, but because they disagreed about how society should be organized. Navigation Officer Kyungmin raised his head from his star charts, his insectoid features showing confusion. Political systems. They killed each other over organizational methods? It gets worse, Su-Yung replied, pulling up more files. Look at this conflict. They call it the Second Great War. 50 million dead because one group of humans decided another group wasn't worthy of existence, and the rest of humanity united to stop them, even though it meant destroying their own planet's infrastructure. The images on screen showed destruction on a scale that rivaled galactic wars, but these were humans fighting humans on a single world. Cities reduced to rubble, entire populations displaced, technology turned to weapons of unimaginable destruction. They developed atomic weapons, reported weapons specialist Nayeon, her voice filled with professional appreciation. But look how they used them, not for conquest but to end a war faster and save lives in the long run. They destroyed 2 of their own cities to prevent millions more deaths. Captain Jinwoo felt his mandibles clicking rapidly, a nervous habit he couldn't control. The data streaming across the screen showed a species that operated on principles, completely foreign to galactic thinking. Every other species in the galaxy fought for logical reasons: survival, resources, territory, genetic advantage. "Show me their recent conflicts," he ordered, dreading what he might see. The screen filled with images of humans in strange vehicles, fighting in distant deserts and mountains. But as Su-Yung translated the mission reports, the same pattern emerged. Humans dying to protect the rights of other humans they'd never met, in countries they'd never seen, fighting against oppression they'd never experienced personally. They call it peacekeeping, Su-Yung explained. They send their soldiers to die in foreign lands to protect people who can't protect themselves, not for conquest, not for resources, but because they believe every human deserves freedom. The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. A species that would fight for abstract concepts, that would die for strangers, that would sacrifice their own for ideas rather than survival, represented something unprecedented in galactic history. "There's more, Captain," Su-Yung continued, her tentacles now moving with renewed urgency. "I'm finding records of something they call humanitarian missions. They send their military forces into disaster zones, not to conquer, but to provide medical aid and disaster relief. They risk their soldiers' lives to save people from natural disasters, plagues, famines." The implications were staggering. A military force that used its power to heal rather than harm. Soldiers who risked death to save lives rather than take them. "Captain," Engineer Do-Hyun said quietly, "if they're willing to die for strangers, for abstract concepts, for people they'll never meet, what will they do when someone threatens their own families, their own worlds?" Captain Jinwoo stared at the data flowing across the screen, his mind trying to process the implications. Every military strategist in the galaxy understood motivation. You could predict an enemy's actions by understanding what they wanted. But humans seemed to want things that couldn't be quantified, couldn't be negotiated, couldn't be understood. "Get me everything on their current military capabilities," he ordered, his voice barely steady. "If they'll sacrifice everything for ideas, there's no predicting what they'll do to defend what they actually care about." Junior analyst Yuna had been staring at her display screen for 6 straight hours, her crystalline fingers tracing patterns across the holographic interface. As she dissected every component of the human medical ship. Her species, the Silicari, were known for their patience and analytical precision, but what she was discovering made her normally calm demeanor crack. "Captain," she called out, her voice carrying an unusual tremor, "I need to show you something. Immediately. This changes everything we thought we knew about human technology." The bridge crew gathered around her workstation as she projected the ship's internal schematics onto the main display. What appeared to be a simple medical vessel revealed layers of complexity that defied conventional understanding. "Look at these healing nanobots," Yuna explained, highlighting microscopic robots flowing through the ship's medical systems. They're designed to repair cellular damage at the molecular level. But, Captain, the same programming that allows them to rebuild tissue can be reversed. These nanobots could disassemble a living being just as efficiently as they heal one. Communications Officer Su-Yung leaned forward, her tentacles writhing with nervous energy. You're saying their medical robots are potential weapons? Not potential, Yuna corrected, her voice growing more urgent. Active weapons. The programming is already there, just dormant. With a simple command override, every healing nanobot in this ship could become a microscopic assassin. They could target specific organs, dissolve bone structure, or even rewrite genetic code. The implications sent a chill through the bridge. Captain Jinwoo had seen many weapons in his career, but never anything that could kill from the inside. Out while appearing to provide medical care. Chief Medical Officer Tai Hyung approached the display, his 6 arms working multiple scanners simultaneously. His species, the hexapods, were the galaxy's premier medical experts, but what he saw in the human technology made his professional confidence evaporate. Captain, their regeneration chambers are beyond anything in our medical databases, Tai Hyung reported, his voice filled with professional awe and growing fear. They can regrow entire limbs in days, repair spinal damage that we consider permanently disabling, even restore brain tissue after severe trauma. He paused, his scanners detecting something that made his skin change color with shock. Sir, I'm reading evidence that they can bring beings back from clinical death. Not just recent death, but cases where the patient has been deceased for over an hour. Engineer Do-hyun looked up from his console, his scales now completely pale. If they have that level of biological control, what could they do to harm someone? Could they accelerate aging, cause organs to fail, make someone's own immune system turn against them? Security Chief Nyon had been quietly running tactical analysis on her weapon systems while listening to the medical reports. What she discovered made her wish she had never boarded this vessel. Captain, their defensive systems are disguised as patient care protocols, she announced, her voice tight with controlled panic. What they call emergency shields to protect healing patients can withstand direct hits from our plasma cannons. Their emergency transport beams, designed to quickly move critically injured patients, can teleport armed soldiers anywhere within a 50-kilometer radius. She brought up tactical projections showing the ship's true capabilities. Sir, this single medical vessel has enough defensive power to hold off an entire battle group. And their mobility systems could deploy invasion forces faster than our sensors could track them. The bridge fell silent as the crew processed these revelations. A species that had turned healing into warfare, compassion into strategy, medical care into military dominance. There's more, Yuna continued, her analysis revealing deeper layers of the human technology. Their patient monitoring systems aren't just tracking vital signs, they're sophisticated enough to monitor electromagnetic signatures, quantum fluctuations, even gravitational disturbances. This medical ship could track the movement of entire fleets while pretending to simply monitor heartbeats. Captain Jinwoo felt his exoskeleton plates shifting nervously as he realized the scope of what they were facing. They've weaponized mercy itself, he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of dawning understanding. Tactical Officer Jae-hwan pulled up comparative analysis between human medical technology and standard galactic weapons systems. What he found confirmed everyone's worst fears. Captain, their medical scanners are more sophisticated than our military sensor arrays. Their healing algorithms process data faster than our targeting computers. Their patient transport systems have better shielding than our warships. The crew exchanged worried glances as more systems revealed their dual nature. Emergency medical lights that could blind attackers, surgical tools that could slice through armor plating, anesthetic gases that could incapacitate entire boarding parties. They don't just fight to win, Captain Jinwoo realized aloud, his voice filled with growing horror. They fight to save everyone, including their enemies, and that makes them the most dangerous force in the galaxy. Communications Officer Su-Yung began frantically composing priority messages to Fleet Command, while Engineer Do-hyun worked to encrypt their findings. The implications were too important to risk interception. Sir, Security Chief Naeon said quietly, a species that can turn every act of kindness into a potential weapon. every gesture of help into a strategic advantage, every moment of healing into an opportunity for intelligence gathering. How do you fight something like that? Captain Jinwoo stared at the human vessel on the view screen, its dark hull no longer looking like a simple medical ship, but rather like the most sophisticated war machine he'd ever encountered. A war machine disguised as an instrument of healing. I don't fight it, he replied grimly. You pray it stays on your side. The bridge crew worked in tense silence, each member processing the terrifying realization that they had encountered something unprecedented in galactic history. A species that had made compassion their greatest weapon and healing their most effective form of conquest. Send the message to High Command immediately, Captain Jinwoo ordered. Priority classification, galactic threat level unknown. We're not dealing with conquerors or merchants or even warriors. We're facing something far more dangerous. We're facing saviors. The emergency session of the Galactic Defense Council had been called within hours of receiving Captain Jinwoo's report. Admiral Minho stood at the center of the massive circular chamber, his forearms spread wide as he addressed representatives from 47 different species. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering, designed to accommodate beings of vastly different sizes and environmental needs. Fellow council members, Admiral Minho began, his voice amplified by translation, devices that converted his words into dozens of different languages simultaneously. What I'm about to share with you will fundamentally change how we view galactic security. The holographic display in the center of the chamber flickered to life, showing Captain Jinwoo's patrol ship next to the mysterious human medical vessel. Murmurs of concern rippled through the assembly as the data from the investigation played out before them. Ambassador Gilthar of the Crystalline Collective shifted his geometric form, light patterns dancing across his surface in patterns of confusion. Admiral, my species has monitored human expansion for 30 rotations. They appear to be peaceful traders and explorers. That's exactly what makes them so dangerous, Intelligence Director Yunbi interjected, her scaled features showing the strain of processing the implications. She activated her personal display, showing a galactic map with human influence marked in soft blue. Look at this expansion pattern. Every world they visit, every species they encounter, becomes dependent on their aid within cycles. The map showed something that chilled every military strategist in the room. Human expansion didn't follow typical conquest patterns. Instead of taking strategic worlds or resource-rich systems, they established medical stations, rescue outposts, and emergency response networks throughout seemingly random sectors. Defense Minister Kyungmin rose from his seat, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber floor. His species, the Stone Walkers, were known for their strategic thinking and had survived 3 galactic wars through careful planning. The pattern is clear once you know what to look for. They don't conquer territory, they conquer gratitude. He gestured to the display, highlighting specific systems. The Outer Rim Mining Collective had a plague outbreak 2 years ago. Human medical ships arrived within days, providing treatment that saved millions of lives. Now those worlds refuse to trade with anyone but humans. Senator Youngmi of the Trade Federation added her own disturbing observations. The Nexus Station disaster last year, when the space platform's life support failed. Human rescue ships were the first to respond, saving thousands of beings from 17 different species. The survivors speak of humans like they're legendary heroes. The chamber filled with anxious chatter as more representatives shared similar stories. Every tale followed the same pattern: crisis, human intervention, grateful populations, and eventual economic and political alignment with human interests. They're not building an empire, Admiral Minho realized aloud, his voice carrying a note of horrified understanding. They're building a network of obligation. Every species they save becomes indebted to them, and debt is the strongest chain in the galaxy. Strategic Analyst Jiwon activated her workstation, displaying military projections that made the situation even more alarming. Admiral, we've analyzed their expansion rate using traditional military models, and it makes no sense. But if you model it as a medical network, the pattern becomes clear. They're positioning themselves to provide aid to every inhabited system in the galaxy within 50 years. The implications hit the Council like a shockwave. A species that could respond to any crisis anywhere in the galaxy would effectively control galactic politics without firing a single shot. There's more, Intelligence Director Yunbi continued, her voice growing more urgent. We've discovered that their medical technology is far more advanced than anything in our databases. They're not just treating injuries and diseases we can handle. They're curing conditions we consider incurable, healing wounds we classify as fatal. She displayed medical records that had been obtained through intelligence networks. Beings brought back from the edge of death, genetic conditions reversed, even aging slowed or stopped entirely. The technology was so advanced it seemed almost magical. Council Speaker Ji-hoon, representing the ancient energy beings, spoke in harmonics that translated as deep concern. If they can extend life indefinitely, if they can cure any disease, heal any wound, what happens to natural population control? What happens to the balance of power when everyone owes their lives to humans? The chamber erupted in worried discussions as representatives realized the scope of the problem. A species that could make everyone in the galaxy dependent on them. For survival had achieved something no conqueror in history had managed: absolute control through absolute necessity. Admiral Minho called for order, his voice cutting through the chaos. The situation is unprecedented. We cannot fight them because they haven't committed any acts of aggression. We cannot ignore them because their influence grows stronger every day. And we cannot allow them to continue because they're reshaping the galaxy's power structure without anyone's consent. Defense Minister Kyung-min stood again, his massive form commanding attention. I propose immediate diplomatic contact. If we must coexist with humans, it should be as equals, not as future patients in their galactic hospital. The vote was swift and unanimous. Every species represented in the council agreed that humanity represented a threat unlike any they had faced, precisely because they weren't threatening anyone directly. Send a diplomatic envoy to human space immediately, Admiral Minho ordered. Full honors, maximum security, and our most skilled negotiators. We're going to offer them alliance before they decide we need saving. As the council session ended and representatives returned to their ships, each carried the same chilling realization. They had encountered something far more dangerous than any conqueror or destroyer. They had found a species that won wars by healing their enemies, conquered territories by saving lives, and built empires by making everyone grateful. The humans weren't coming to destroy the galaxy. They were coming to save it. And that was infinitely more terrifying than any invasion fleet. Throughout the galaxy, emergency sessions were being called, military strategies were being rewritten, and diplomatic protocols were being established. The age of human expansion had begun, and no one knew how to stop someone whose only weapon was compassion. The end